Peppa Pig and the Zombies in the Yard. One morning, Peppa woke up to a strange noise outside. George was still asleep. She got out of bed and looked out the window. Grandpa Pig stood motionless in the garden. His skin was greenish, his eyes cloudy, and his clothes torn. Peppa went downstairs and called for Mummy. But Mummy Pig had changed too. She walked slowly, her head tilted, and dark drool dripped from her mouth. Daddy sat on the couch, his eyes empty, and one leg dragged behind him. Peppa ran to Susie's house, but Susie was strange too. She wandered the yard, her dress ripped, arms stretched forward. No one spoke, no one smiled. The whole town seemed frozen. All of Peppa's friends wandered in circles, as if searching for something. Rebecca Rabbit scratched at a door, Danny Dog clawed the dirt, and Miss Gazelle stood in front of the school without blinking. Peppa hid in the treehouse. She trembled, not knowing what to do. Growls and rustling surrounded her. The zombies didn't notice her as long as she stayed quiet. Night fell. The full moon lit the yard. The zombies gathered around the tree. George came too. He lifted his head, his skin had turned gray, his eyes cloudy, and his toy dinosaur dragged behind him. Peppa screamed. The zombies turned, but no one approached. They just stared. Then, one by one, they turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist. In the morning, everything was quiet. Peppa stepped out of the treehouse. No one was there. The yard was empty. Only George's toy dinosaur lay on the grass. Since then, Peppa never calls anyone by name, and she never looks into the eyes of someone who stays silent too long. Peppa Pig and the werewolf curse. It all started one strange night. The moon was especially large and bright. Peppa woke up to howling outside her window. She looked out and saw Daddy Pig standing on the lawn, his eyes glowing, mouth slightly open, and steam rising from it. He let out a guttural growl. In the morning, everything looked normal. Daddy Pig was reading the newspaper. Mummy was cooking breakfast. But they had strange scratches on their arms, and their eyes avoided Peppa's. George sat quietly, drawing circles in the air. Each day, things got creepier. Mummy Pig began eating raw meat. George scratched at the doors at night. Daddy Pig no longer spoke, only growled. On the third night, Peppa woke to loud howling beneath her window. She looked out. Her family stood in the yard. Their bodies were covered in coarse fur, their eyes animalistic, their hands clawed. Peppa stifled a scream. In the morning, they acted as if nothing had happened. But Peppa knew this wasn't her family, or not anymore. She went to Grandma and Grandpa's, but they were oddly silent too. In the shed, Peppa found Grandpa's torn jacket and claw marks on the door. The curse had spread. Peppa knew she had to act. In an old book hidden in the attic, she found mention of a witch who lived beyond forests and seas, able to lift ancient curses. The next morning, while the family still slept, she packed her bag and left. First came the foggy forest. Peppa wandered among trees, hearing whispers. Shadows moved on their own. One voice whispered, "You seek the one who knows. Go to the river." At the river, swamp creatures with glowing green eyes blocked her path. They wouldn't let her pass until she solved the riddle carved into stone. What lives without a body, speaks without a mouth, and moves without legs? An echo, Peppa said, and the path opened. Next, the sea of darkness. Her boat rocked on black water. The sky vanished, everything turned gray. Hands reached from the water, but Peppa looked only forward. A voice in her head said, "You won't return the same." On a distant shore stood an old house. Inside, the witch, her face woven from shadow, her eyes glowing violet. She listened silently to Peppa's story. "There is a cure," she whispered, "but the way back is harder. They will be waiting." Peppa received a small violet vial. It pulsed in her hoof. The way back was filled with traps. The forest darker, the sea deeper, and shadows whispered her name. At home, her family waited. They stood on the lawn, now fully werewolves, their glowing eyes and claws dug into the ground. But when Peppa raised the vial, they froze. Drop by drop, to Daddy, to Mummy, to George, to Grandma and Grandpa. Their bodies trembled, fur faded, and their eyes became human once more. Peppa said nothing. She just hugged George tightly. He hugged back. A single tear glistened on his cheek. Since then, on every full moon, the whole family goes to bed early. And Peppa always checks if the vial is still in its place. A sunny day illuminated Peppa Pig's house, filling it with familiar laughter. But today, something was off. A subtle, almost imperceptible tension hung in the air. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Susie Sheep stood on the doorstep, but her gaze was unusually blank, her movements stiff. She didn't smile, as always, nor jump with joy. Peppa and George, usually so cheerful, froze. Their eyes widened in bewilderment. Mummy Pig slowly approached the door, her face pale. Daddy Pig, usually so brave, hid behind the sofa. He trembled, his snout twitching with fear. Susie entered the house without a word. Her steps were heavy, each sound echoing. She slowly turned her head, her eyes fixed on Peppa. Peppa felt a chill. Susie extended her hand, her fingers pale and cold. She held something small and black. It was a doll resembling Peppa, but the doll had empty eye sockets and a crooked smile. George cried, tears streaming down his cheeks. Mummy Pig hugged the children tightly. Susie slowly lifted the doll. She began to make strange, whispering sounds. It wasn't Susie's voice. Daddy Pig darted from behind the sofa, grabbed his children and wife. They ran out of the house without looking back. Susie remained standing. She watched them go, her empty eyes following their every move. The doll in her hand swayed slowly. The sun disappeared behind the clouds. Peppa Pig's house, usually so cozy, now seemed ominous. Inside, a quiet, eerie laugh echoed. Peppa's family ran without a glance. Peppa Pig. The attic doll. A sunny day lit up Peppa Pig's house, filling it with the usual laughter. Mummy Pig was cooking in the kitchen, and Daddy Pig was reading the newspaper. Everything was normal, almost. But a strange tension was floating in the air. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Susie Sheep was standing outside, but her eyes looked empty, and her movements were stiff. She wasn't smiling or jumping with joy like she usually did. Meanwhile, Peppa and George were playing in the attic and found a strange box. The box was old, dusty, and covered in mysterious symbols. George pulled on it. It fell and opened. Inside was a doll. Not like any of their other toys, it looked old, with bright red hair and a creepy smile. Peppa felt a small chill. George, not scared, picked up the doll. It was heavy and cold to the touch. Its eyes seemed to follow their every move. That night, the doll sat on the shelf in George's room. Moonlight came through the window, lighting up its face. George was asleep, but the doll was not. Its glowing eyes stared at him all night. The next day, Daddy Pig noticed strange things. His tools were scattered around the garage. Mummy Pig saw that her favorite flower had died. Peppa and George noticed their toys were moving on their own. The doll sat in plain sight. Its face changed slightly every time. Its smile grew wider. Daddy Pig shook his head, confused. Mummy Pig sighed, trying to find an answer. Susie Sheep came to visit, but she acted strange. She didn't want to play. She just stared at the doll. At one point, the doll appeared on the TV screen. Susie couldn't look away. She began saying strange things. Peppa and George got scared. Susie grabbed the doll. It started laughing. Susie collapsed. Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig tried to understand what was happening. The doll's presence was everywhere. Daddy Pig tried to throw it away. It resisted. Its eyes turned red. The doll hit Daddy Pig. He cried out in pain. It fell, but stood up again quickly. That night, the doll crept into Peppa's bedroom. She was asleep, unaware. The doll moved closer to the bed. Its tiny hands reached out. Peppa felt a chill. She opened her eyes. The doll was standing right in front of her. Its smile was terrifying. Peppa screamed. The doll jumped onto the bed. Daddy Pig and Mummy Pig ran in. They saw the doll holding Peppa tightly. Daddy Pig grabbed it. It fought back. Mummy Pig called the police. The doll broke free and ran through the house. The police arrived, but the doll hid. The officer searched the house, but found nothing. Peppa and George were terrified. The doll watched them from the shadows. Its laughter echoed through the house. After the police left, it returned, its eyes glowing. The Pig family decided to leave. They packed their things. The doll hid inside the luggage. No one noticed. The car started moving. The doll smiled. Its plan had worked. The family left with the doll. The doll ate the entire Pig family. Now it rides alone down an empty road. The sun is setting. Its eyes glow. It's waiting. New victims will come soon. Its laughter echoes again. It's alone, but not for long. Peppa Pig and the Diary That Didn't Exist. One day, Peppa and George were playing in Grandpa Pig's attic. Among the old boxes, Peppa found a thin black diary. It was dusty, but looked almost new. Inside, the pages were neatly filled with tidy handwriting. Peppa opened the diary and read, "Tomorrow I will find this diary." She was surprised. That was happening right now. She decided to take it with her. The next day, a new line appeared in the diary. "Today, Mummy will drop a cup." An hour later, Mummy Pig really did drop a cup in the kitchen. Peppa froze. The diary seemed to know the future. The entries continued. Every evening, Peppa found new lines. "Susie won't come to play. Daddy will lose his glasses." Everything came true exactly. But one day the diary said, "Tonight the mirror will open and Peppa will disappear." Peppa turned pale. She covered the mirror with a blanket and put the diary in a drawer. But she couldn't sleep. That night she woke up to a rustling sound. The mirror was uncovered, the blanket on the floor. Her reflection was gone, only a dark hallway in the glass and a figure that looked like Peppa with lifeless eyes. Peppa screamed. Mummy and Daddy ran in. She showed them the diary, but all the pages were blank. Since then, Peppa never goes to the attic. But one day George found the same diary under her bed. He opened it and read, "Now you are next." Peppa Pig and the Sinister Mirror. One rainy day, Peppa found an old mirror in the basement. It was covered in dust with a crack in the corner. Daddy Pig said it used to belong to Great-Grandpa. Peppa wanted to clean it and put it in her room. From that moment, the mirror started behaving strangely. Sometimes Peppa saw someone else in it, someone who looked like her but with empty eyes and a slightly twisted face. On the second evening, Susie came over to play. They were in Peppa's room when Susie suddenly froze, staring at the mirror. "Peppa, she's smiling, but you're not," she whispered, and ran away. That night, Peppa woke up to a strange scraping sound. Her reflection didn't move. It stared back with a tilted head and an unnaturally wide grin. Peppa covered the mirror with a blanket. In the morning, the mirror was uncovered again. George said he saw Peppa standing by his bed during the night, just watching him. Mummy Pig thought it was all just dreams, but when she looked into the mirror herself, it showed not her, but a dark silhouette. Peppa tried to take the mirror outside, but it became as heavy as stone. Fingerprints appeared on the glass, as if someone was pressing from the inside. Then a new neighbor arrived, a puppy named Max. He immediately said, "This mirror doesn't belong here. It shouldn't be kept in the house." That evening, Peppa noticed the mirror looked cleaner, and in the reflection was her room, but no Peppa, only the silhouette with eyes like hers. That night, the mirror cracked in half. In the morning, it was gone. No one knew where it went. Since then, Max checks the corner of Peppa's room every evening, and he always says the same thing. The mirror isn't gone. It's just hiding. There is no way out. The morning in the Pig family house was unusually quiet. Peppa woke up and noticed something strange. George sat in his crib completely still. His eyes stared at one spot. Peppa went downstairs to the kitchen for breakfast. Mummy Pig stood at the stove with her back turned. Peppa called for Mummy, but she didn't answer. Something was wrong with Mummy. Mummy slowly turned around to face Peppa. Her eyes had become completely different. Peppa got scared and ran to Daddy. Daddy Pig was reading newspaper in the living room. Daddy also didn't respond to his daughter's call. His hands were shaking while holding the newspaper. Peppa ran outside to her friends. Susie Sheep was swinging on the swings. Susie was swinging very slowly and strangely. Her gaze was empty and cold. All of Peppa's friends gathered at the playground, but nobody was playing or laughing. The children stood silently and looked at Peppa. Their movements became very slow. Peppa realized that everyone had changed. She was the only normal one left. Grandpa Pig appeared from around the house corner. He walked with a strange, wobbly gait. Everyone slowly approached Peppa. Their eyes glowed in the twilight. Peppa screamed and ran back home. But home no longer seemed safe. Shadows flickered in the house windows. Something was waiting for Peppa inside. Peppa stopped at the house door. Now she was completely alone. The door slowly opened by itself. Strange sounds came from inside the house. Peppa took a step back from the house, but behind her everyone else was already standing. Everyone's eyes glowed in the darkness. Peppa realized there was no way out.